Ike, Countdown to D-Day is a dramatization of the 90 days leading up to Operation Overlord. Operation Overlord was an Allied invasion of Normandy. This film showed senior level leaders preparing for the invasion that occurred on June 6, 1944. The efforts were led by General Dwight Eisenhower, also known as Ike, who was appointed as a Supreme Allied Commander. Ike faced many trials and tribulations in preparing for this invasion, including losing more than 900 men in a rehearsal landing that was penetrated by German torpedo boats. Ike also dealt with personality conflicts within his leadership realm, including Field Marshal Montgomery, General Patton, and General de Gaulle. Ike steadfast and persevered in leading what would become the largest amphibious assault ever attempted.
In the words of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme quality for leadership is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, no matter whether it is on a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office. General Eisenhower was born on October 14, 1890, and died on March 28, 1969. He served as the 34th President of the United States from 1953 through 1961. General Eisenhower served in the U.S. Army between 1915 through 1953. During World War II, he was a five-star general in the U.S. Army. One of the elements of character portrayed by General Eisenhower was courage. The first example of courage noted was when General Eisenhower stood his ground with Prime Minister Churchill and stated that either he would be the sole leader of the operation or the Prime. General Eisenhower demonstrated courage when reprimanding Major General Miller for speaking about the operation in public, which ultimately led him to sending Miller home. It took courage to move forward with the operation despite the young lives that were sacrificed for the good of humanity. Humility was another element of character portrayed. General Eisenhower always had troops on his mind, what the outcome would be, to writing the letter home to his wife. Throughout the movie, General Eisenhower was willing to accept the responsibility for the outcome alone, even writing a letter in case things did not go planned. At the conclusion of the movie, he said, "Of course Operation Overlord did not fail. How could it, with so many fine young men and women from all corners of the earth, all determined to do their best to free a world gone mad?" The shadows of leadership portrayed by General Eisenhower were the shadow of coercive power and the shadow of mismanaged information. Coercive power is the ability of one person to force another to act or decide by threat of punishment or unwanted consequences. During the initial conversation with Prime Minister Churchill, Eisenhower stated that for him to lead, he would need complete power and would not move forward unless he was granted such. Coercive power was also illustrated when Patton visited Eisenhower regarding Patton's statements to the press. Eisenhower had the power to dismiss him. The shadow of mismanaged information is a complex situation where leaders have access to information that others do not, and they can choose how, when, and if to use that information for either good or evil. General Eisenhower refused to provide interviews about himself, as that would not help the success of the plan, and possibly fuel his subordinates to compete with him for the limelight. From an impression management perspective, it was clear to General Eisenhower's subordinates and everyone in the briefing room of his interpersonal relationship with the royals when they confirmed their lunch date for the future. Field Marshal Bernard L. Montgomery was born on November 17, 1887, and died on March 24, 1976. He served in the role as a field marshal in the British Army and served from the years from 1908 through 1958. He served in the First World War as a junior officer and then commanded the British Army during the Second World War from 1942 through 1943. One of the elements of character that Field Marshal Montgomery portrayed in the film was courage. Montgomery displayed courage specifically in the film in one of the scenes where he was told that he did not receive the position of Supreme Commander. He also portrayed courage throughout the film with his willingness to offer his sincere opinions and his eagerness to strike quickly. When he was informed that he would not be the one leading the war, which was a position he lost to General Eisenhower, he disputed the decision but fell in line as a soldier. This must have been a significant blow to a leader that had proven himself successful in battle. Furthermore, that he was not to lead the effort in his own country must have added a great deal to what he may have perceived as humiliation for a leader of his accomplishments and experience. Field Marshal Montgomery further displayed courage with his eagerness to continue to assault and engage the enemy despite the odds and the obstacles the film discusses. Optimism is another element of character Field Marshal Montgomery displays in the film. The setbacks that the operation experienced due to training mishaps or inclement weather did not prevent him from wanting to move forward with the operation. His experience as a leader motivated him and moved him to believe that the operation needed to continue to move forward in order to take advantage of morale. Field Marshal Montgomery was portrayed as exhibiting a few of the power sources that create the shadow of power. Coercive power, reward power, legitimate power, expert power, and referent power make up the shadows of power. Field Marshal Montgomery's disappointment when he did not receive the position of Supreme Commander was evident in this film. Montgomery was counting on his track record and his previous accomplishments to help him land this position. Reward power is based on the ability to deliver value, tangible or intangible results. Field Marshal Montgomery had proven himself during the war and was convinced that he was the one to lead. His previous victories during the war delivered tangible results that were easily measured but not fully discussed throughout the film. Field Marshal Montgomery also displayed the shadow of privilege, as both Prime Minister Churchill and General Eisenhower both played to his ego. During a scene in the film, the Prime Minister and General Eisenhower discuss how it will not be easy to handle Field Marshal's ego. In another scene instrumental to the success of the operation, where Operation Overlord is briefed to the royal family, General Eisenhower places Field Marshal Montgomery at the front to appease his ego. General Eisenhower and his advisors understood that Field Marshal Montgomery felt entitled to lead the operation in his own country, and that he viewed them as outsiders for arriving late. Furthermore, they valued his knowledge and expertise during the operation, but needed to minimize his self-importance and anxiousness to change the course of the operation into a quick, precise assault. Montgomery felt entitled to be the supreme commander of the war because he had been at war. He had been victorious, and the new operation was being planned and supported in England.
General George S. Patton was born November 11, 1885, and passed on December 21st, 1945. He was a general in the United States Army, where he served between 1909 and 1945. While not directly involved in the D-Day invasion of Normandy, he did play a crucial role in the U.S. tactical strategy to deceive when the invasion would take place. General Patton is often regarded as one of the most colorful personalities in American military history. He often walked around in full uniform, including helmet and ivory-handled revolver, and was known for his unorthodox methods and inspiring oratory skills. He was highly regarded among troops, but his controversial nature often made him less so among Allied high command. General Patton showed many elements of character in his long career of inspiring leadership. There are countless stories about his bravery and courage that had circulated through the ranks and still do today. He provides an excellent example of transformational leadership through his inspiring speeches, utmost care for his troops, and the respect he elicited from peers, followers, and even Axis leaders. Patton was characteristically known for his brilliant military operations, wealth of knowledge, and unmatched leadership skills. His expertise in strategic commanding, horsemanship and cavalry, swordsmanship, and knowledge of military vehicles, specifically tanks, established his status as a legendary leader and an American folk hero. He was an avid reader and noted that by perseverance, study, and eternal desire, any man can become great. While an undoubtedly inspiring leader, General Patton seemed fated to be the center of controversy. In contrast to his impressive and legendary expertise and attributes, he often showed impulsivity and irresponsibility through controversial incidents. One of the most renowned of these incidents was in 1943 when, as a lieutenant general, he was visiting soldiers in a field hospital. He reportedly slapped and verbally chastised Private Charles Coole and Private Paul Bennett. As they were seemingly both uninjured, Patton thought them to be cowards hiding in the medical tent. Rather, both men most likely suffered from what was then called battle fatigue, one of the many terms used to describe post-traumatic stress, in a time before it was widely recognized. This episode resulted in widespread outrage and had professional as well as personal consequences for Patton. General Eisenhower sharply rebuked him, but insisted that Patton's military qualifications, loyalty, and tenacity made him invaluable in the field, as we saw reenacted in the film Ike: Countdown to D-Day. This incident exemplifies both of Patton's shadows, as the privileges he experienced from his rank, relationships, and expertise often lessened repercussions from his irresponsible and impulsive actions.
Eisenhower knew he would lose men and took that into account when planning the attack, and this portrayed a recognition of risk, along with the potential paratrooper fatalities, issues with the weather, issues with training and equipment operation, and issues with having so many successful people with large egos on the same team. Trust was another sample of ethical climate at Allied headquarters. Eisenhower needed to trust his team and vice versa. This was done through openness, concern, reliability, collaboration, openness between the team members. Each leader had concern for their team as well as for each other. There were always updates provided, whether good or bad. There was no information that was hidden. And the openness of General Eisenhower allowed the team to understand certain decisions that he was making.
As Supreme Commander, Eisenhower contributed to a climate of trust and recognition of risk, as did General George Patton and Montgomery, ensuring the success of Operation Overlord. In the film, Montgomery's disappointment in being passed over for Supreme Commander was evident in his discussions with Prime Minister Churchill during the Chief of Staff meetings and with General Eisenhower. However, he exhibited trust in the decision and put aside his disappointment to ensure the success of the operation. While the film makes evident his assertive position on when and how to attack, it is also clear that he understood the risks involved. He was committed to victory and understood that an assertive position was needed to ensure that. Patton also contributed to this climate. With the German command distracted by Patton's phantom invasion in France, the Allies were able to make their actual landings on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. Patton's limited knowledge of the actual operation represented a huge level of trust in his team and Allied leadership, and was a cornerstone of the Allied victory. Many of his character traits alluded to earlier, as well as as in the film, also came into play to contribute to a recognition of risk at the headquarters. Patton was well known for his commitment to his troops, and this inspirational leadership style contributed to faith in a very unconventional operation.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.